2014. The year the Dragon Age Inquisition won Game of the Year. The year of the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. And the year of the Expendables 3. And the year that finally broke Ubisoft. 2014 was shaping up to be an incredible year for both the fans and the investors of the renowned French developer Ubisoft, stepping into the shiny and new high-definition world of the 8th generation of consoles, with more powerful components and lots of television options.
TV. Sports.
Rubbing their midst together with a combination of the superb marketing, featuring some dazzling E3 showcases, which had the average gamer's jaw on the floor.
I kind of think that I'm Tilton.
Amazing cinematic trailers featuring Lord, and at the time, the reliable Ubisoft brand behind the wheel. What could possibly go wrong? We all thought. What could possibly go wrong?
Everything.
I didn't know about any kids, alright? That wasn't supposed to happen.
I want you to think very carefully. Think.
Look, man. Even if I knew a name, you couldn't get me talking. These guys... I heard stories, man, that like nothing you ever seen before. You gotta walk away from this, man.
Some things you can't walk away from.
Please!
Where?
We need a distraction. I called the cops.
You did. Jordy, tell me you're joking.
No.
Everyone was incredibly hyped for Watch Dogs. As I said before, the E3 demos, may it rest in peace, made the graphics look truly next generation. Being a new game developed for the PS4 and the Xbox One, gamers around the world, including this guy, thought we had really stepped into the next generation. And Ubisoft were holding our hand as we crossed the road. But then, it came out. The overall dip in visual quality was one of the most controversial things in gaming. Having been limited to running on the old-gen consoles, the game was held back incredibly by this decision. And gamers across the world were outraged. This doesn't look anything like what we saw a year ago, were the cries of those who pre-ordered. Watch Dogs was one of my first experiences with being very disappointed for a game's release, but it also showed me a valuable lesson of how hype can be a dangerous train to board. A lesson gamers, however, wouldn't learn for quite some time yet. In Watch Dogs, we follow deeply voiced and traumatized character number 567, Aiden Pierce.
Okay, I'm in the lobby of the Milan.
A highly advanced hacker who dabbles in the criminal underworld of dystopian Chicago. And in this version of Chicago, instead of being invaded by the Decepticons, the entire city is run on a central operating system, or CTOS as the hipsters call it. On a bot's job with his mentor Damien, Aiden hacks the wrong people, and his niece is killed in an assassination attempt on his life. He then vows to hunt down those who plotted his assassination and take revenge. I'm sensing a real sort of like common theme with the revenge plots in this, but you know, I'm sure it's nothing. But things aren't that simple. Damien is back and kidnaps his youngest sister, and now Aiden must work to find her, as well as do some very nasty things to those responsible. So my main gripe with Watch Dogs is that just the fact that the plot is really generic. You know, it's been told 1,000 times at this point, and not just by Ubisoft. And sadly, I don't find Aiden a really compelling or interesting enough character to make me feel invested in this narrative. The plot of a story can be basic, you know, but in order for it to be entertaining, it needs to have some great characters to elevate the thing. But Aiden's 20 Marlboro Red voice
500 cigarettes.
This doesn't help an exceedingly generic character through an exceedingly generic plot. The main thing for me that keeps this game at least somewhat interesting is its setting. And thankfully the idea of a CTOS being controlled by a corporation that then controls an entire city and just spies on its civilians, I think is a cool premise and a great setting for a game. And I think it's the main thing which carries the story above the kind of 6 out of 10 mark. It's just a shame that Ubisoft didn't write a more compelling narrative to go with its cool concept, because that together could have made something really special. It's not bad really, it's just painfully average and quite predictable. Aiden, however, is a cool enough protagonist.
I'm the driver.
With his worryingly excited jacket. But honestly, that voice is just insane. Like, how does one achieve this level of raspy deepness? It's giving me Christian Bale's Batman at times.
You were excommunicated by a man, you psychopath.
And the other characters, they're just fine. You know, Kelly is a cool enough character. She's like a goth hacker who works for the DedSec organization, which is hell-bent on exposing the truth behind CTOS and how it's just built to spy on people. I mean, you know, that just wouldn't happen, would it? See, this is what I mean. I think being part of DedSec, or like playing a character part of that organization, would make for quite a unique narrative. You know, something Ubisoft realized in their sequel a few years later in WatchDogs 2. But instead we just have revenge plot number 887, which isn't bad. It's just when you build a world which has sort of like a lot of narrative avenues which are quite unique, and then you go for the same road traveled constantly with lots of potholes and tire marks everywhere, it just seems like a bit of a waste of what a great concept. The shooting is serviceable, the driving is serviceable, and the movement, questionable. But the standout here is really how you interact with the world. Being in a car chase with police and activating bollards or activating traffic lights so drivers suddenly become kamikaze pilots is always fun, if not sometimes a bit hard to witness sometimes because of how the camera works. It all leads to some really satisfying and fun moments. Again, like this story, it's nothing bad. It's fun. You know, it's fun to shoot things and drive cars as it is in most games when it's designed, you know, remotely well. And Ubisoft did well in making you feel cool as like a vigilante with a jailbroken iPhone. But it's just like the story mission design and side missions, they're also just serviceable, that's it. There's nothing really fresh or innovative here. It's just sort of the standard practice at this point. It all feels very by the numbers and sort of just checks boxes rather than how they can expand a system and push it to its limits, especially on the next generation of consoles, you know? There's just sort of like nice side missions used to interact with the world, make it feel like there's more going on. You know, we've got races, assassinations, gang hideouts, and convoys. Hang on a minute. This is just Far Cry without the hunting, isn't it?
Hello?
You know, none of these missions are inherently bad. It's just the thing that sticks out to me is that most of these missions are just reskinned Far Cry missions. There's even radio towers to clear parts of the map, like, come on! I'd say my favourite of these missions would probably be the convoy ones. It sort of like gives you the route of where the convoy is going to drive through, and then you have a little bit of time to prepare as to how you stop it. And sometimes you can't just kill them, you have to knock them down for whatever reason. And I always found this interesting because there's a mechanic which sort of, you got to be good or bad. You want to be a good vigilante that sort of helps civilians, you want to be the protector, you know, or do you want to be the bad guy who just kills everyone? And obviously, because I'm a nice guy, I went for the protector route, but it's really hard to do the protector route because when there are shootouts like in the streets, there's quite a cool mechanic where you can save civilians that are stuck in their cars. You sort of open the door and go, "Get out, man, get out." So that's my Ian Pearce impression. But you know, when the shooting is going, you know, sometimes bullets fly and people catch strays, and you lose so much reputation when you kill a civilian. I have to admit, there have been times where I've just completely killed, like I blew up a steam pipe in the middle of the road, and wow, yeah, you know, that was completely on me. It just killed so many people with that. You know, it's a fun system. Many attribute the lack of quality in the game and the immense visual downgrade to the fact that Ubisoft was intent on releasing it on the previous generation of consoles, being the Xbox 360 and the PS3, as well as the new generation, being the PS4 and the Xbox One. And I've managed to nail their reasoning down to 3 different reasons. Money, and also money. But this time the E is a pound sign.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talks.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
It's clear that there was so much hype around this game. Ubisoft really wanted to capitalize that by having it accessible on all platforms, and who blames them, really? But it came out on the Wii U, and like 3 people own that. I'd love to know the sales figures for the Wii U. You know, the marketing kind of just like shot themselves in the foot. It was being marketed and hyped up to be something to rival GTA at the time. You know, GTA 5 came out the year prior, but that was also developed for the previous generation. So everyone was like, "Oh my god, next generation GTA is here, and Ubisoft are here as well." But instead, it was just another serviceable Ubisoft title. Ubisoft have always been known for their multi-platform releases, usually with ports, or even just entirely different versions of their games, which are almost unrecognizable to their console counterparts, especially the ones released on the DS. Those are not the same game. But this time, instead of prioritizing the flagship console, seeing what the development team can really do with the new tech, they sacrificed what could have been a fantastic looking game, really taking advantage of the new technology, you know, with some more diverse features, and then just for a generally serviceable entry into their portfolio, which was only really remembered for its controversy over the misleading marketing. In my opinion, however, I don't think WatchDogs is a bad game by any means. I actually really enjoyed playing through it this time. I played through it quite a few years ago now, so my memory on it was quite hazy, so it did feel quite fresh, you know, but unlike another game on the list, which I didn't, you know, that was kind of hard work. But it feels like such a missed opportunity. Sure, the game does look good, especially on PC with all the settings cranked up to insanity, but at the time gamers were just really let down by what was delivered. It almost has a rushed feel to it due to its lack of innovation. It does have a really cool concept, but it's just like they didn't build anything on it, you know? It's all just wrapped up in the same old Ubisoft wrapping paper and a big visual downgrade.
Tired of running from my failures. Monsieur de la Serre, my father. I want to make it right.
Are you prepared to travel the Eagle's path?
If that's a fancy way of asking, do I want your help? Yes.
Similar to Watch Dogs, Assassin's Creed Unity had an insane level of hype around it prior to its November 2014 release. I remember specifically that cinematic trailer which had that Lord song playing in the background. It went a little too hard. The marketing for Ubisoft's games have always been top-notch. They really do lean into the sort of live action or heavy on the cinematic presentation, something which has been slowly phased out, and I think for good reason. But, you know, in some ways they do kind of miss that insane spectacle they brought with it, but it's almost like they're selling you on the idea rather than the actual game itself. It's like nowadays gamers want to see what they're actually going to play. You know, we want raw gameplay because we've been lied to so much. Seeing how the game runs in real time, none of this smoke and mirrors, an attitude which Ubisoft and other companies, CD Projekt Red, excuse me, I don't know what happened there. These guys are literally directly responsible for that. Assassin's Creed Unity's launch has gained its moment in history for being infamously broken. The nightmare-inducing bugs were enough to turn those who were kind of curious but didn't buy it, just turn them away. But for the holy faithful who pre-ordered, they were treated to one of the most broken games ever released. Most of the media coverage for the game was focused on its terrible technical state, as it was hot and fresh news and it got clicks, but underneath, especially after a long series of patches, I personally think Assassin's Creed Unity is one of the best Assassin's Creed games. In 1789, set during France's favourite pastime, a revolution, we follow Arnos Dorian, a witty and charismatic Frenchman.
France.
You're a dead man.
Oh, step lightly there, you'll hurt yourself.
Whose father is mysteriously assassinated when he is a boy, and then adopted by a wealthy family. After his adoptive father is also assassinated, Arnos is framed and drawn into the conflict between the assassins and the Templars. Seeking justice, Arnos joins the assassins and uncovers yet another Templar conspiracy which threatens the future of France. Hang on a minute. This is just another revenge plot, isn't it? Well, yeah, but it's good here. Trust me. You know, as I've said before, a revenge plot can go one of two ways. It can be a real ride as you are already invested in its characters and you really want to see them murder the fella that killed their dog. Hang on a minute, that's John Wick.
Yeah.
Or the other way, where there's no real investment in the characters, so it just feels like the killing for the sake of killing, and it's just way less interesting. Luckily though, Assassin's Creed Unity I believe to be the former of the two. Arnos is a great yet flawed character, not some goody two-shoes. He almost uses the assassins to get what he wants, disregarding their creed when it suits them, but also honouring it when the situation calls for it. Which to me makes for a far more compelling character. He is witty, but not to the insufferable level, and also he's in love. If I had £1 for every time Arnos shouted, "Elise! Elise!" I'd be able to purchase a single 99p flake in the current British economy.
Elise. Elise. Elise! Elise. 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 Elise!
And that's because Arnos is in love with the daughter of his adopted father. However, he soon finds out that she and her father are Templars, sworn enemies of the assassins. It makes for a fairly interesting Romeo and Juliet dynamic at some parts, but the thing is, it doesn't stay too interesting for long, as it's not a massive focus. Elise is sort of missing for most of the game, which I think is a big shame, but when Elise is around, it does make for some of the best moments in the story. Elise just had some of the coolest, badass moments in the story.
Germain.
I will never talk.
Then right.
And like Arnos, she is flawed as well. She's consumed by the need for revenge to the extent that she forgets herself and the ones who care about her. There's like a duality of being on two sides of the same war, then leading to the two working together in order to reach a common goal, which is finding the killer of Monsieur de la Serre, which is Elise's father, which Arnos then allows to slip through his fingers in order to protect the woman that he loves. But then Elise could not let it go so simply, leading to her dying in the pursuit of revenge. Spoilers, by the way. She gets what she wanted in the end, but at the cost of her own life. And honestly, I was half expecting Arnos to just take his own life at this point. But then we wouldn't be able to play any of the DLC now, would we? Assassin's Creed Unity's story is nothing groundbreaking, but it's just got some really good moments throughout. Arnos and Elise are very likeable characters, and some of the others you run into throughout your journey for revenge are very compelling as well. Bellic is definitely a standout. He's the one that pushed Arnos into joining the assassins.
Come here, you little pisspot. Focus, pisspot. What are you waiting for, pisspot?
Who then attempts to take control of the leadership who is trying to break bread with the Templars, a conflict which Bellic believes will never end and would only be a temporary peace. Arnos is then forced to put him down in one of the best moments in the narrative. Bellic's intentions are well telegraphed as he constantly pushes back on the leader's attempt at making peace, believing it just fruitless. But you never believe he will take things that far. You just sort of think he's just, playing devil's advocate, I suppose. The thing is, his justification is understandable, and that's what makes for a great opposing force for that part of the story. Overall, there is so much great characterization throughout the game, accompanied with a fairly standard revenge narrative, but it's heavily elevated by its characters as well as its setting. Meeting Napoleon is quite fun as well, and he looks a lot better than the weird sex rat that Ridley Scott made.
You certainly don't look like a blood-crazed revolutionary.
Aside from the creme de la creme of the Caribbean in Black Flag, Assassin's Creed Unity might be my favourite setting. Paris just looks absolutely beautiful. It once again reinforces Ubisoft's ability to craft amazing and detailed looking open worlds to traverse and murder people in. Fun fact time. Apparently the iteration of Paris, and more specifically the Notre Dame, was so detailed in fact that when the unfortunate incident of the Notre Dame burning down in 2019, Ubisoft donated over 500,000 euros to help with the restoration efforts, as well as architects, engineers and designers used the realistic 3D model of the cathedral in the game to help with the visualization and planning stages of the reconstruction with such precision. They even built like a VR experience called Save Notre Dame on Fire to help build people's understanding and the importance of rebuilding the iconic landmark. Not bad, Ubi, not bad. Now, moving back to the fun French murdering simulator, a big focus during the marketing was the new and advanced crowd systems that were introduced, making for some truly insane levels of NPCs standing around having polite conversations or holding aristocrats' heads on spikes. Being made specifically for the next-gen hardware, Ubisoft were really able to take advantage of the new components' abilities, which is, I just wish they did that with WatchDogs, but, that's beside the point. Although even the next-gen hardware actually struggled at the time of the crowd density, leading to some not-so-epic performance, reaching the highs of 20 frames per second at some point, it still makes for a really impressive spectacle. Visually, this game still holds up fantastically, not just because of the amazing design of the open world, it just feels so lived in, and that is because of that crowd mechanic. But the overall presentation just still looks so detailed. Bearing this game is 11 years old now. You seriously wouldn't be able to tell when playing this on PC like I did, but you can really crank the frame rate up to 120. However, if you go any further than that frame rate, textures do just cease to exist. I thought it was just like a cool Animus thing, but no, it was just the game literally dying. It's mainly because Ubisoft believed that no one would ever be able to run this game over 60 frames per second back when it came out, which, that's fair enough. It was pretty hard to run. However, in classic Assassin's Creed fashion, the map itself is just pretty disgusting. You can filter it. I don't know if you could do that in the other ones, and I was being an idiot, but, f me, it is just such a mess. There's so many icons. That's because there is quite a bit to do. There are plenty of side missions here with their own sort of little stories. They're called pays stories. I don't know why I put a French accent on. There's the standard assassination missions where you, believe it or not, just assassinate people. There's collectibles, which I just didn't bother with because I hate doing collectibles. It's just, check this stuff, it's boring. And random chests dotted around, and like the games that came before it, there's a real estate mechanic where you can buy cafes and upgrade them to increase your income as you play. All pretty standard affair, nothing to write home about, but it's, it's fun nonetheless. In Assassin's Creed Unity, Ubisoft seemed to have finally listened to the long-time fans complaining about the same combat being used for almost 10 years. They wanted something fresh, something that may also entice some new players as well. And this is definitely something different, in the sense that you need to actually pay attention to what's happening on screen. Ubisoft then decided to introduce the revolutionary parry button. No more hold, block and counter. You must now react to what the enemy is doing, whether it be just a simple normal attack, a parryable one, or a heavy attack which you must then dodge. Or they just whip out their flintlock and try and shoot you. I actually really enjoyed this iteration of the combat. It's nothing too advanced, but it doesn't need to, you know, it doesn't like play itself like before. It's also really easy to get overwhelmed, as you simply can't just block and counter an entire horde of enemies. You actually have to parry these attacks and make opportunities to strike. And when there's like 10 French blokes hounding you with 4 musket men on the roof, then you got some heavy people and then like some grenadiers and all that sort of stuff. It's very easy to meet God himself. I died a considerable amount of times. Overall though, good changes to the combat. It feels good to fight. The animations and finishes are really slick and cool. It doesn't feel too easy, but not too overbearing to the point where it tackles the power fantasy that they're always going for. Stealth has also seen an overhaul, if you can call it that, with the introduction of a crouch button. Revolutionary, I know. But this time around, stealth actually feels like stealth. It's very easy to get spotted as well. Enemies will stand there and watch your last location for ages, like they've literally got nothing better to do, just waiting for you to move. I don't know if that was actually just a bug or they were supposed to wait there for that long, but honestly, I feel like there was like a good minute where they'd just be standing there just waiting. It also just feels a lot more responsive this time around. It's not perfect. There are some instances where the AI can see through smoke. There is sort of like a lack of consistency here, and you have to restart as they have the infrared goggles on. But it's mainly the same. It's the same stealth in all the other iterations, just with a crouch button. Parkour, however, now this is amazing. Easily the best iteration in the franchise, introducing a descend parkour feature, making downward traversal so much more fluid. It all just looks incredible. The animations look great. The way Arno just throws himself off buildings looks amazing too. They really outdid themselves here. It just feels so good to traverse Paris, and the open world design lends itself to it so well. Being able to weave through surprisingly detailed buildings as well as the rooftops just adds a lot more diversity to the system to play with. It's just great. Now watch this drive. It's a real shame that they've pretty much done away with this system entirely, removing yet another piece of the Assassin's Creed DNA as they have progressed, as they call it. In this iteration, Ubisoft has introduced a gear system this time, rather than just sort of the simple outfits you had in the previous iterations. In order to progress to certain missions and stay at the appropriate combat prowess, you need to upgrade your outfit and your gear as well. It's fine, you know, some of the outfits do look a bit shit in my opinion, but it adds some nice customization to the game, and as you get to the later stuff, it adds some attributes so you can sort of min-max it to stealth, or ranged, health, and melee, if you so please, which is, it's stuff, isn't it? There's also a few weapon archetypes to choose from this time, rather than sort of like picking up a musket off the floor from a dead enemy and like losing it whenever you climb something, which was always frustrating. You can now have it as part of your loadout, which I think is a great change. I still did favour the one-handed blade due to its speed. I did try out the long weapons. There's like pikes and heavy weapons such as great swords and pickaxes, and then we have the muskets as well. It's nothing especially crazy, but it does just add a little bit more variety to the Assassin's Creed formula, so that's never a bad thing. A big focus of the E3 showcases for Assassin's Creed Unity was the co-op mission mechanics. Sadly, I wasn't able to experience them myself this time around, mainly because no one plays the game anymore. But I remember playing a few back in the day, and yeah, they were fun, They were like jumped up side missions where you play with friends. There's even more skills in the skill tree which are made for co-op, which is kind of cool. I enjoyed it at the time, but I believe the sentiment was that it was just a little bit underbaked. Something to do, that could be improved in a sequel. Although Assassin's Creed Unity suffered some severe technical issues at launch, which earned it a pretty bad overall public perception, underneath that I believe is a truly great game, one I've played through several times now over the years. The evolutions of the Assassin's Creed formula may not have been anything groundbreaking, but they were welcome changes, and with a captivating story for me, it goes down as one of the best in the franchise. However, that didn't really help Ubisoft at the time. In 2014, when this game came out, it was considered a major failure, especially in the customer's eye. Even IGN gave it a 7 out of 10, which is insane. Across the board, the reviews were just sort of like 7 out of 10s. You know, it's like the media just focused so heavily on this broken game, which is fair enough. It deserved to be highlighted, but what really I think underneath is a great game was just tarnished by its reputation.
Again, terribly sorry for what happened before. And I, of course, am pagan men. Picture right into the camera. There we are. A text for help. You don't text for help, you cry for help. So come on, you're gonna cry for help. If you're gonna do something, you're gonna do it right. Here we go. Go on. Cry for help. Cry for help.
Help.
Pathetic. No, cry for help.
Help!
You mean it, boy. Help! From your diaphragm! Help! Shh, 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 shh. Now we listen. Nothing. I'm afraid they're not coming for you, buddy. Oh! We'll find out what he knows.
Far Cry 3.5, Far Cry 4 is the next entry in the Far Cry franchise, fully developed for the next generation of consoles. Far Cry 4 promised truly next generation graphics, Troy Baker, explosions, and Troy Baker. Like the previous two games on this list, Far Cry 4 had a pretty decent level of hype around it, mainly due to its resounding success for the previous entry, critically as well as commercially. And when the game released, it was a pretty warm reception to it, you know, getting an 8.5 from IGN, meaning it could be anywhere from amazing to dogshit. It was just sort of, it was good. You see, I thought the general consensus of this entry in the, you know, the consumer's eye was that it was kind of mid, but when I was scrolling through like various forums on the research for this video, and there seems to be quite a lot more of a positive attitude to the game, a lot more so than I thought. I thought it was pretty average back when I played it. I don't know if that was just because I had such a boner for Far Cry 3. And then I replayed it for this, obviously, and my feelings have changed. Kind of. Far Cry 4 follows our new protagonist, Ajay Ghale, who travels to Kirat to scatter his mother's ashes in a place called Lakshmana in the mountains. However, once he arrives in Kirat, his lovely bus journey is interrupted by a famous voice actor, and is then thrust into a civil war between the rebellious Golden Path and Pagan Min's dictatorship. Ajay then takes on the service of his now dead father, Mohan, helping the Golden Path and settling disputes between his two leaders, Amita and Sabal, and their clashing ideologies. Ajay must now navigate a war-torn country, perilous wildlife, and plenty of drugs in order to fulfill his mother's final wish. Far Cry 4's story is definitely better than I remember, however I don't think it's anything too special, especially when being compared to the previous entry. It does have some highlights, however, being some of the more compelling characters, but part of the reason where I think it struggles is with our main protagonist, Ajay. Whereas his motivations are somewhat interesting, I feel like as a character, he sort of like lacks any sustenance. It's like Jason wasn't like the Tony Soprano of gaming or anything.
It's too bad they don't have a telethon for fuckface-itis, huh? They found a cure yet?
But when you played as Jason, you felt he was on a journey, you know, externally fighting through the pirates to save his friends, and then internally slowly becoming more attached to the island and its violence, becoming a more effective killer to the point where at one point he can decide to stay at the island at the end. Spoilers, by the way. I just found that there's not really that sort of depth here with RJ. He feels like a little bit too much of a blank slate. As the story progresses, you find conflict between the two leaders of the Golden Path, Amita and Sabal. Amita believes that changing the way Kirat does things, it will allow the country to then flourish, although her ideas of getting to that goal means resorting to more illegal means, effectively turning Kirat into a cartel state. Whereas Sabal believes that honouring the traditions of Kirat was built on will create avenues for the country to develop, sticking to the ways of the past, no matter how out of date they may seem, and sometimes to the expense of the development of the country. And neither of these leaders are perfect. They both have their pros and cons. Neither option is really great or feels like the right choice at the end. As mentioned, Amita does turn Kirat into a country built on drugs, importing, exporting, that sort of thing. And you don't need me to tell you that that isn't exactly great. Sabal sticks to the traditions of Kirat, almost cutting itself off entirely from the wider world, believing that he can just make the country self-sufficient, and forcing a young girl into being seen as an idol, no matter if she wishes to or not. It's either bad or bad, in my opinion. But the criticism I have is to why do they have to go 100% in the direction that they are? Like, why does Amita have to make drugs? Like, surely you can do something else, maybe make medicine from the opium fields or other exports of natural resources, like other countries. And Sabal is okay apart from the young girl stuff and going back on a lot of the things that he promised he'd do. So, maybe he's not that okay. But these decisions are what I found the most interesting part of Far Cry 4's narrative, when the player is actually given some agency and has to make their own decisions and deal with the consequences, as even at the time, these decisions are pretty difficult to make. There's Amita is, I'll give you an example. So there's a mission where you have to choose between saving some civilians or saving some intel. And you kind of have to pick between the two. And if you want to save the people, then go save the people. But then the consequences are that the dictatorship, Pagan Min's dictatorship, now have that intel. And I think one of the missions gets harder later on. And then if you do the vice versa, Sabal gets quite mad at you because obviously you just let a bunch of civilians die. So it just sort of depends on your moral compass. But as someone who likes to play as I like to save the civilians and stuff like that, it was quite a hard decision to make because the practicality of the intel is obviously more enticing, but obviously you don't want to let civilians die, really, because then it just kind of goes against the point of the whole rebellion itself. You're supposed to be saving these civilians from this dictatorship, not just letting them die. And now I suppose we have to talk about the Pagan Min-sized elephant in the room. The man himself. From memory, I didn't really remember liking this villain too much. I kind of thought he was just evil for evil's sake, but after replaying this game for God knows how long, I haven't played this game in a good few years now, I have made a bit of a U-turn, and I do kind of like him now. Now, I don't love him, okay? I do find him a little evil for evil's sake, but his weird obsession with playing the cool uncle to RJ, I thought was kind of interesting. It's played so well by Troy Baker. As Min was in love with RJ's mother before she fled the country and took RJ away, Min is more of a sympathetic villain when compared to a man like Voss. He's more of a broken man dealing with some truly terrible decisions he has made in the past. And then there's some pretty bad things have happened to him as well, which have put him in this state. Just sort of caught in this endless cycle of violence. I mean, sure, he's a piece of shit. Don't get me wrong. But you can kind of feel sorry for him, kinda. Troy Baker's performance is just great as per.
Terrorists, right?
Although at this point, I do find his voice kind of distracting these days because it's so recognizable. But the thing, his performance is always great, so that's not a bad thing, it's more of a me thing. I almost just wish he was in it a little bit more, apart from a series of phone calls that this game seems to be absolutely obsessed with.
RJ, my boy, are you busy? You don't mind me calling, do you?
He only really comes up in the middle, in person. He sees you at the middle. He's, I got blood on my fucking shoes.
And I got blood on my fucking shoes.
And then in the middle, where he captures you and puts you in a prison, has a little bit of a taunting session. And then at the end, or at the beginning, if you do, stay and enjoy the crab rangoon.
Please, stay right here. Enjoy the crab rangoon. Don't move. I will be right back.
Min was willing to gift RJ Kirat, you know, he wanted him to take the mantle, all because he loved his mother in his own weird way. And he wanted to be free of the endless suffering that he has inflicted on himself as well as the people of Kirat. But then again, he still did do a lot of bad stuff, you know. You didn't just have to lead a massive dictatorship with propaganda towers and constant killing of people that might be part of the golden path. There are some really serious flaws there, which obviously you need in order for this kind of villain to work. But the thing is, where I find interesting is, like, Amita and especially Sabal are master manipulators, you know, trying to sway RJ to the side using whatever they can just to sort of, like, turn them against each other, you know, and then they only sort of show their true colors at the end when the dust has settled and that they are victorious. You know, Pagan is not a good person, which I saw a lot of people arguing about online. Like Pal, he did still dictate a country in quite a mean way. He's just more of an interesting villain, which I feel could have benefited from a lot more screen time and interaction with RJ himself. But my point is, I don't think Amita and Sabal are great themselves either. And I think that can be attributed to some quite great writing from the writing department at Ubisoft, because having that sort of, you know, having to question that is like, these guys aren't actually that great either, but also Pagan Min is a piece of shit anyway. Having to have that sort of conversation in your head you can't be attributed to really good writing. It's just, once again, the story itself is just kind of generic. It's quite by the numbers, but it is elevated by these good characters. Okay, so I would like you just to close your eyes for me for a second. You know, breathe in, out. Now picture Far Cry 3's gameplay for a moment. It's good, isn't it? The guns feel good and responsive. The hunting is fun. Driving feels good. Now I want you to just open your eyes and look at what's on screen. Yeah, this is Far Cry 4's gameplay. It's exactly the same. So now we get to my biggest complaint of this game, and I think it was a lot of people's complaint as well, is that it's the gameplay. It's not that it's bad, it's just the same, you know, there's not really any innovations or differences here. There's some neat additions like the little buzzer, which allows you to get to your objective quicker while missing all the beautiful world that Ubisoft has constructed once again on the ground. Yeah, I can't forget to mention, the way that they've designed this world, just how it looks, it's amazing. You know, just the trees, the high mountain ranges, all of it. Ubisoft just always knock it out of the park with how their games look. The wingsuit is a cool addition as well. There are some new side missions and an arena game mode. You know, that's it. You really couldn't have thought of anything more, Ubi, you know? Something tells me you really just wanted to get ahead of the game and get a new Far Cry out on the next gen, didn't you? Yeah, come on, you can tell me, I won't tell anyone. But yeah, as mentioned, the game does look very nice. Ubisoft have just once again shown they make a pretty open world with plenty of busy work to fill them up with. There's also some missions where you go into Shangri-La, where the Ubisoft team clearly let their designers just, you know, flex their muscles. These areas are beautiful. It was sort of like jaw on the floor at some of them. They are a little bit boring though, due to a lack of interesting mechanics. Having a tiger is cool though, it kind of scratches the itch. I've been seeing all the tigers on TikTok getting like the little scratches, and I just think, you know what, I could have a tiger, I could do that. But as I said, the game is still fun. The Far Cry gameplay will always be pretty addictive, but it's just the exact same structure. It just feels kind of lazy. You know, there's your outposts, radio towers, the hunting, supply drop missions, assassination missions, races, that sort of stuff. There are some new additions like the propaganda missions, which is just go to a place and blow some stuff up. You know, and there's some new hunting missions. So in terms of the crafting system, which is the exact same as it is in Far Cry 3, once you get to the final stage of that piece of equipment, like say if you're doing your loot bag, and you've got to 3 out of 4 of the loot bag options, you then have to do a special hunting mission where you hunt down a sort of jumped up steroid-induced version of that animal to then skin and turn into your loot bag. It's fine, you know, it's fun, but it's just that. Is that it? Is that all you've got? It's just the mission design as well. It's the exact same. There's even another mission where you go down and burn a drug field, you know, except this time there's no electronic music. It just gets a lot staler, a lot more quickly due to this copy and paste design, which is where I really struggled playing through this one this time. I think it was just because I have recently just played Far Cry 3, and this game is pretty much the same thing. So it's just, unlike WatchDogs and Assassin's Creed Unity, where there was still some sort of freshness there was some new things there, but this was just the same thing. Another example, all the guns are the same, with a few new ones to fool you that there's plenty of new stuff. There's like a gun for hire mechanic where you can call Golden Path rebels in to get shot at instead of you. However, I just never used this. I never found a use for it. There are, however, some cool new skills. Now that I think about it, the vehicle takedowns are a personal favourite. They are sick. It feels very action movie-like. Being able to shoot from a car is a great one as well. Watching your target break the sound barrier as they fly past you when you shoot them with a grenade launcher will never get old. The arena game mode is fine, where you try to survive as many rounds as possible with enemies, whether that be 2 legs or 4. It's fun for a few rounds with some unique rewards tied to it, but it just gets pretty stale pretty quickly. But really, there isn't too much to talk about here, as I spoke about most of the gameplay in my previous video where I talked about Far Cry 3. The gameplay is just almost identical to its previous iteration, with a few new bells and whistles at the desperate attempt to seem new. To me, Far Cry 4 is just Ubisoft trying to capitalize on the next generation. They were clearly thinking, oh, the new consoles are out, we must have a new Far Cry out there. Which led to what I believe is a game almost identical to its predecessor, with some standouts in its narrative. That's it, you know. Ubisoft knew that they couldn't get away with this again. Although it was received kind of well, there was a consensus reflecting how the two games are very similar, sacrificing innovation for speed in putting a product out, with the general thesis being, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And after a rocky year of disappointment with WatchDogs and Assassin's Creed Unity, they kind of needed a win, like something really fresh, but to me, the Far Cry 4 did not really get the pass. Overall for me, I think 2014 really changed the way that I viewed Ubisoft. They used to be one of my favourite developers, making some of my favourite games. And in the public eye, they were pretty well liked as well. But 2014 made me personally take a look at Ubisoft for a moment and say, what are they doing? In retrospect, none of these games were actually truly bad. You know, they all had their problems, sure, but whether that be a rocky launch, severe visual downgrades to the point where it just feels like false advertisement, or just copy and pasting something while hoping no one will notice, this year led me to wipe the smudge off my glasses and look at Ubisoft with a bit more of a skeptical eye, as the public did as well, I believe. You know, the cracks may have already been there, but now everyone is seeing them. Just want to say a quick thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. I think that 2014 was just a very interesting year in the timeline of Ubisoft, where a lot of the opinions started to change, especially for me. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please feel free to give it a like. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these games as well, especially Far Cry 4, because I found it really interesting what other people were saying about it. On Reddit, people were really like enjoying it, and I always think that maybe at the time people didn't like it, but in retrospect people have started to enjoy these games a lot more. I certainly did with WatchDogs. I remember thinking it was quite mid when I first played it, but then going back and playing it now, I thought it was quite good. So yeah, I'd love to hear all of that down below. And if you're new here, please feel free to subscribe. I'm trying to upload as much as possible, but these Ubisoft videos do take quite a long time to make. There's a lot of research and gaming that goes into it, and when you're playing Far Cry 4 for like the 6,000th time, it's not exactly the most interesting experience. I was maybe even considering streaming some of these games that I play. I thought it'd be kind of fun. I know we've obviously got quite a small group of people here, but it would be really nice to maybe interact with some of you that want to have a chat while I play or anything like that. Maybe I'll give that a go. We'll see. But yeah, if you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers for now.